The forest of Lyra 7 stretched endlessly, a world of glowing plants and strange, whispering trees. The light here was not the yellow of Earth's sun, but a soft, shimmering blue-green that made every leaf look alive. Dr. Curran Vall stepped carefully on the uneven ground, his boots making only the faintest sound against the mossy floor. He had been on this planet for 3 weeks, studying the unusual wildlife and collecting samples for the colony back on Asteris Station. But today, the forest felt different. The air was heavy with the scent of wet earth and something faintly sweet, like the aroma of flowers back home. Curran paused, his ears picking up a sound that made his pulse quicken. It was a cry, soft but urgent, coming from somewhere deep in the glowing underbrush. It did not sound like any bird or animal he had catalogued. It sounded desperate. Curran crouched low, peering through the bushes. There, barely visible in the dim light, were 3 small creatures huddled together. They were no bigger than a house cat, but their shapes were unusual. Their fur shimmered faintly, a mix of violet and silver, and their eyes glowed softly, reflecting the forest's light. They whimpered, reaching out weakly to one another. Curran's heart tightened. "They're starving," he whispered to himself. His training as a scientist had taught him to observe carefully, but something in him, the part of him that had always felt for life, made him move forward. He reached for the small nutrient packs he always carried for emergencies. They were designed for humans, but perhaps he could adapt them. Before he could approach, a shadow moved. Curran froze. From the tangle of trees stepped a creature unlike anything he had seen. It was tall and slender, with smooth, golden-brown fur that rippled like silk. Its eyes were the size of a human's but glowed with a fierce intelligence. Its ears were pointed, alert, and its tail swished with tension. The creature stared at him, and Curran realized with a start that it was guarding the cubs. He remembered the legends the local colonists had whispered about, the feral princess of Lyra 7, a mysterious being who protected orphaned creatures. Most had dismissed it as a myth. Now she or he stood before him, and Curran understood that this was no ordinary animal. He slowly raised his hands, showing he carried no weapon. "I'm not here to harm them," he said softly. His voice sounded strange in the quiet of the forest, almost too loud, yet it was the only way to communicate his intentions. The creature's ears twitched, its gaze never leaving his face. Curran knelt slowly, taking care not to move too quickly. He opened one of the nutrient packs and began to mix it with water from his canteen, trying to make it more like milk. The cubs stirred at the smell, their tiny noses twitching. The princess remained still, eyes fixed on him, her stance tense but not aggressive. One of the cubs whimpered again, weak and trembling. Curran set the small bowl down near them. "Drink," he whispered gently, hoping they would understand. Slowly, the cubs approached. They hesitated at first, glancing at the tall creature behind them, then sniffed the liquid. One of them licked it, then drank greedily. The others followed. The princess tilted her head, watching every movement. She did not intervene, but did not leave either. Curran noticed how carefully she moved, like every step had meaning. She seemed to be studying him, testing him. He realized that she was trying to decide if he was a friend or a threat. For the next hour, Curran stayed still, letting the cubs eat. He watched the princess closely. Every now and then, she would step a little closer to him, then stop, as if deciding whether he could be trusted. Curran spoke softly to her, telling her about the nutrient packs and how they could help the cubs survive. He did not know if she understood his words, but he hoped she understood his intent. Gradually, the tension in the air eased. The cubs were feeding steadily now, their glowing eyes brighter than before. The princess's tail twitched slowly, a sign of cautious approval. Curran felt a small surge of hope. Perhaps he had earned a small measure of trust. As he observed the cubs, he noticed the forest around them. Strange plants with glowing leaves swayed gently, and small creatures darted between the shadows. The planet was alive in a way that was different from Earth, but the cubs and their guardian seemed part of it, connected to every movement, every sound. Curran felt honored to witness this world so closely. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the ground. Curran froze. The cubs stopped drinking and huddled together. The princess turned sharply, ears flattening. From the shadows of the trees came a large predator, its body covered in sleek black scales that reflected the glowing forest light. Its eyes were red, fixed on the cubs. The princess hissed, a sharp sound that echoed through the clearing. Curran realized she was warning the predator to stay back, but the predator did not retreat. Curran had no weapon, only his knowledge and his wits. He picked up a nearby branch and waved it slowly, trying to make himself appear larger. He also activated his personal beacon, hoping the sudden light and sound might scare the predator. The predator hesitated, its head turning toward the flashing light. The princess took this opportunity to move closer to the cubs, positioning herself between them and the threat. She crouched low, muscles tensed, ready to leap. Curran felt a surge of respect. She was not just a guardian, she was a warrior. The predator snarled but finally retreated into the forest. The tension did not leave immediately, but the immediate danger was gone. Curran exhaled, trying to calm his racing heart. The cubs had not moved, their glowing eyes still fixed on him and the princess. He knelt again, letting them see that he was still there to help. The princess circled him slowly, sniffing the air, then brushing her side against him lightly. Curran understood this as a sign of acceptance. She was saying that he could stay, at least for now, and that she trusted him enough to let him help her family. Curran smiled softly. "I'll stay," he said. "I won't let anything happen to them." The cubs whimpered softly, their small bodies relaxing as they drank more of the milk he had prepared. The forest seemed to settle around them, the glowing plants swaying gently as if in approval. As night began to fall, Curran knew he could not leave the clearing. The cubs needed him, and the princess's trust had to be earned fully. He built a small shelter from fallen branches and glowing leaves, careful not to disturb the environment more than necessary. The cubs curled up inside, and the princess lay nearby, eyes never leaving Curran. He watched them through the night, marveling at the connection forming between human and alien. In this wild, untamed forest, he realized that survival was not only about strength or skill. It was about understanding, empathy, and cooperation. Humanity had brought many things to the stars, but perhaps the greatest gift was the ability to care, to protect, and to learn from the creatures they encountered. By the first light of the planet's twin moons, the cubs were stronger, and the princess had allowed Curran to sit closer than before. He had fed them, protected them, and shown respect for their world. The first step in building trust had been taken. Curran knew the journey ahead would be difficult. The forest was full of dangers, and the cubs' lives were fragile. But for the first time, he felt a sense of belonging. He was not just a visitor on Lyra 7, he was a part of its story now, intertwined with the lives of the cubs and the feral princess who guarded them. He looked at the glowing leaves overhead and whispered, "We'll get through this together." The princess's eyes met his, and for a moment, Curran thought he saw something like understanding there, perhaps even respect. The cubs chirped softly, their small bodies pressed close to each other, and Curran knew that the bond forming here was one that would change everything, for them, and for humanity's place among the stars. As the morning light touched the clearing, Curran packed away his equipment, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of the forest. He had a mission now, greater than any research or discovery, to protect life, to earn trust, and to show that humans could be allies in a universe that was as wild as it was beautiful. The feral princess watched him as he moved. Her tail flicked once, a silent signal, and Curran smiled. He had taken the first step in a story that would test courage, compassion, and the very nature of what it meant to be human. The forest was alive around them, but in the clearing, something else had awakened too. A bond between species, fragile but unbreakable, ready to face whatever Lyra 7 would throw at them next. And so, with glowing cubs safe for now, and a wary but curious guardian watching over them, Curran settled in for the first night in what would become his new home. The morning on Lyra 7 was quiet, but it carried a sense of expectation. Dr. Curran Val awoke to the soft glow of the twin moons still lingering in the sky, casting a gentle light over the forest. The cubs were already awake, chirping softly to each other as they explored the edges of their small clearing. The feral princess watched them closely, her golden-brown fur catching the soft light, eyes sharp and intelligent. She remained cautious of Curran, but there was less tension than the night before. Curran stretched and slowly rose. He did not want to startle the princess or the cubs. Carefully, he gathered his equipment and began preparing a small breakfast of plant-based nutrients. He had learned from the night's experience that the cubs needed a steady supply of energy to survive in this wild environment. As he worked, he noticed the princess sitting slightly apart, her posture rigid, as if assessing him. "I know you're watching," Curran said softly, not expecting a response. "I only want to help them." Curran knew he had to learn more about the princess if he wanted to protect the cubs fully. He spent the morning observing her movements. She was graceful, precise, and aware of every sound, every shadow. When one of the cubs tried to climb a low-hanging branch, she tapped it lightly with her paw, guiding it back down. She taught without words, but her lessons were clear. Curran marveled at her intelligence. Suddenly, the princess froze. Her ears flattened, and she hissed softly. Curran's eyes followed hers to the trees, where a movement caught his attention. Small, shadowy creatures were approaching, their shapes unfamiliar. They were smaller than the predator from the night before but moved quickly, their eyes glinting red in the light. Curran felt a thrill of fear, but he reminded himself that panic would not help anyone. The creatures stopped a few meters from the clearing. Curran noticed they were scavengers, likely drawn by the scent of the cubs. He realized the cubs were too weak to escape if attacked. He looked at the princess, who crouched low, ready to defend them. He could see the tension in her muscles, the careful calculation of her next move. Curran took a deep breath. He did not have weapons, but he had something else: human ingenuity. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small device he had designed for signaling wildlife, a bright, pulsing light combined with a low-frequency sound intended to disorient aggressive animals without harming them. He activated it and the light flashed across the forest floor, casting moving shadows. The sound was strange, low, and vibrating, but harmless. The shadow creatures paused, their heads tilting as they tried to understand the unfamiliar signals. The princess let out a low growl, her tail lashing. The creatures hesitated further, then turned and disappeared into the underbrush. Curran exhaled, relief washing over him. The princess did not relax immediately, but her posture softened slightly, acknowledging his help. The cubs chirped softly, moving closer to Curran. He knelt and held out his hands. They sniffed him cautiously before nuzzling his palms. The princess circled slowly, watching carefully. Curran realized that trust was building, small step by small step. After the danger passed, Curran decided to explore the area. He needed to understand the forest if he was going to protect the cubs. He motioned gently to the princess, who followed at a cautious distance, her eyes scanning every movement. The cubs followed as well, their small feet making faint sounds on the mossy ground. The forest revealed its secrets gradually. Strange plants with glowing veins seemed to pulse in rhythm with the wind. Small creatures darted through the shadows, some curious, some wary. Curran noticed how the princess moved with a deep understanding of her environment, stepping over hidden hazards and leading the cubs safely through tricky terrain. At one point, they came to a small stream with water that shimmered with tiny bioluminescent organisms. Curran knelt and tested the water. It was safe to drink, and the cubs drank eagerly. The princess sat nearby, watching intently, her tail flicking. Curran realized she was testing him again, seeing if he would respect the water source and the forest. He spoke softly, telling the cubs to drink carefully, showing respect for the environment. By midday, Curran had learned more about the cubs' behavior and needs. They were curious, playful, and intelligent. They mimicked some of the princess's movements, trying to stalk small insects and climb low branches. Curran felt a sense of joy, knowing that their lives were improving, even in the wild. But the forest was not without danger. While collecting samples of glowing plants, Curran noticed a large scar on a nearby tree, deep and jagged. The princess approached, sniffed it, and hissed low in warning. Curran understood that it was a sign of a predator larger than the cubs, but not the same as before, something that had marked its territory. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on him. Protecting these creatures would not be easy. Curran spent the afternoon building small traps and alarms around the clearing, nothing that could harm the creatures, but enough to alert him to approaching predators. He worked quietly, careful not to startle the cubs or the princess. She watched from a short distance, occasionally moving closer when she thought he needed guidance. As night approached, Curran prepared another meal for the cubs. He had learned to mix the nutrient packs with some of the local plants, creating a more balanced diet. The cubs ate quickly, their energy returning with each bite. The princess sat nearby, her gaze softening as she watched them. That night, as the twin moons rose again, Curran sat by the small campfire he had built from fallen branches. The cubs curled up near the princess, who lay with one paw draped protectively over them. Curran reflected on the day. The forest was full of danger, but it was also full of life and beauty. The cubs were alive because of human knowledge and effort, and the princess was beginning to trust him. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "We'll face what comes together, I promise you that." The princess's ears twitched, her eyes locking onto his. For the first time, Curran thought he saw a hint of understanding, maybe even gratitude. Sleep came slowly. Curran kept a careful watch, listening to the night sounds of Lyra 7. Every rustle, every whisper, every distant cry was a potential threat, but also a sign of the forest's vibrancy. He realized that survival here required more than strength. It required patience, understanding, and cooperation. When he awoke, the princess was closer than the night before, sitting just a few meters from his shelter. The cubs chirped softly, nudging each other awake. Curran smiled and began preparing their morning meal. He realized that he was no longer just a visitor. He was part of this small family, part of their world. He spent the morning teaching the cubs small skills, encouraging them to explore safely. The princess watched, sometimes intervening gently, other times letting Curran guide them. A rhythm was forming, a balance of human knowledge and alien instinct. By midday, Curran decided to venture slightly farther into the forest, hoping to understand the environment more fully. The princess followed, her movements fluid and cautious. The cubs scampered behind, occasionally stopping to observe new plants or chase small insects. Curran marveled at how much intelligence the cubs showed, learning quickly from both him and their guardian. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees. Curran froze. The cubs paused mid-step, ears twitching. The princess crouched, muscles tense. From the shadows emerged a creature larger than any Curran had seen so far. Its scales shimmered in the moonlight and its eyes glowed red. Curran knew immediately that this was a serious threat. He did not panic. He raised his hands, speaking softly to the cubs to stay calm. The princess hissed, stepping in front of them. Curran reached for his signaling device, the one that had scared off the smaller predators. He activated it, the light flashing and the low hum vibrating through the forest floor. The creature hesitated, uncertain of the strange signals. Curran could see the princess calculating her next move, ready to defend her cubs. He knew he had to act quickly. Slowly, he moved forward, showing no fear, holding the device steadily. The creature tilted its head, then turned and disappeared back into the shadows. The cubs chirped softly, relief in their small voices. The princess circled Curran, brushing against him lightly. It was a gesture of trust, a silent acknowledgement that he had helped protect their family. Curran smiled, realizing that their bond had grown stronger in just a single day. As the sun began to set, Curran settled near the clearing. The cubs played nearby, their energy returning with each passing hour. The princess lay beside them, eyes vigilant but relaxed. Curran watched them, knowing that this was only the beginning. The forest was vast, and dangers would come again, but together they could face anything. He whispered softly, "We'll survive, we'll thrive, together." The princess's eyes met his, and he felt a spark of understanding. The cubs chirped, and for the first time, Curran felt that they were more than creatures to protect. They were part of his family. And so, as the night deepened on Lyra 7, Curran, the cubs, and the feral princess rested, ready to face whatever the forest had in store for them next, bound by trust, courage, and the quiet power of empathy and cooperation. The morning sunlight on Lyra 7 was soft and golden, filtered through the glowing leaves of the forest canopy. "Doctor." Curran Vol stirred from his small bed of moss and fallen leaves, careful not to wake the cubs. They were nestled against the feral princess, their glowing fur softly illuminating the space around them. The princess sat upright, eyes scanning the forest as always, her tail flicking slowly back and forth. Curran marveled at her vigilance. She had come to trust him, but only cautiously, and he knew he had to respect that. After quietly preparing the morning nutrients for the cubs, Curran observed the princess as she guided her young. They were learning quickly now, copying her movements, attempting to climb small trees and testing their strength on low branches. Curran could see that they were intelligent beyond their size, able to adapt to challenges with remarkable speed. He smiled, realizing that the days of feeding alone were behind them. This was a family learning to survive together. Curran decided to explore further into the forest. The area around their clearing was relatively safe, but he needed to understand the wider environment to ensure the cubs' survival. He gestured for the princess to follow, and after a tense pause, she did, the cubs trailing behind. Each step into the forest revealed new wonders, flowers that glowed in pulsing patterns, vines that seemed to hum with energy, and small creatures that shimmered in colors Curran had never seen. He took careful notes, documenting the flora and fauna while keeping an eye on the cubs. After a few hours, they arrived at a small hill overlooking a dense section of the forest. Curran could see clusters of predators moving in the distance, and he realized that the forest was far more dangerous than he had first imagined. The princess crouched low, growling softly, teaching her cubs to be aware of their surroundings. She was showing them how to assess danger, a lesson that would be crucial for their survival. Curran nodded, impressed. Human technology had given him knowledge, but here, instinct and observation were teaching survival in a way no classroom ever could. While studying the area, Curran noticed something unusual, a large patch of alien flowers that seemed to open and close in rhythm, almost like a breathing pattern. He carefully examined them and realized they could be a source of nutrition for the cubs if processed correctly. He collected a few samples, careful not to disturb the flower's natural cycle. He knew that blending this plant-based nutrition with the packs he carried could strengthen the cubs' diet. Suddenly, a distant roar echoed through the forest. The cubs froze, ears twitching. The princess growled low, her body tensing. Curran followed her gaze and saw a large predator moving toward them, a creature taller than any he had seen before, with long limbs and eyes that glowed with a dangerous intelligence. He quickly assessed the situation. The cubs were too small and inexperienced to escape this creature on their own, and the princess, while strong, might not be enough to fend it off alone. Curran knew he had to act. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small device he had used before, a combination of light and sound that could startle aggressive animals without causing harm. He activated it, and the light flashed in rhythmic pulses while the low hum resonated through the forest floor. The predator hesitated, confused by the strange signals. The princess moved swiftly, circling in front of the cubs, ready to defend them. Curran stayed calm, slowly moving forward with the device, making sure the predator knew he was aware but not threatening unnecessarily. After several tense moments, the predator turned and retreated. The cubs chirped softly, their glowing eyes brighter now, and the princess relaxed slightly, brushing her tail against Curran's arm in a gesture of acknowledgement. Curran smiled, realizing that their bond was strengthening with every shared danger. He had not just protected the cubs. He had shown the princess that humans could be allies in this wild, dangerous world. The afternoon passed with more exploration. Curran led the group to a small stream, testing the water for safety and showing the cubs how to drink without spilling or contaminating it. The princess observed closely, occasionally correcting the cubs with a gentle tap or nudge. Curran marveled at her patience and intelligence. Every action she took was purposeful, teaching the cubs not just how to survive, but how to respect their environment. While gathering more plant samples near the stream, Curran noticed another sign of danger. Large claw marks etched into a nearby tree, deep and jagged. He realized these were older than yesterday's predator, suggesting that the forest had layers of threats he had yet to fully understand. He shared his observations with the princess, speaking softly, and she responded with a series of low growls and movements that seemed to communicate agreement. Curran was learning to read her language, subtle gestures, shifts in posture, and vocalizations that carried meaning. As evening approached, Curran decided to build a small observation post near the clearing. Using fallen branches, vines, and leaves, he constructed a platform that allowed him to watch the forest while staying safe. The princess observed the construction with interest, sometimes stepping in to adjust a branch or demonstrate a safer method. The cubs were eager helpers, clumsily assisting by bringing smaller branches and leaves. Curran laughed quietly, enjoying the cooperative work. Night fell, and the forest came alive with sounds and lights. Small creatures moved through the trees, and the air vibrated with the hum of life. Curran sat quietly, watching the cubs curl up near the princess. She remained alert, her eyes scanning the darkness, but there was a sense of calm now. The immediate danger had passed, and the forest seemed to accept their presence. Curran reflected on the day. He had learned more about the cubs, the princess, and the forest than in any single day before. Humanity had brought technology, knowledge, and tools, but here, those things were most powerful when combined with patience, empathy, and observation. Survival was not about dominance. It was about understanding, cooperation, and respect for life. As he drifted into sleep, Curran felt a strange sense of peace. The princess had allowed him into their world, and the cubs trusted him. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, predators, environmental hazards, and unknown dangers, but he was ready. Together, they could face anything. The next morning, Curran woke to find the princess standing nearby, watching him carefully. The cubs were already awake, playing quietly, their energy renewed. Curran prepared their meal, mixing nutrients with some of the new plants he had collected. The cubs ate eagerly, and the princess observed, occasionally guiding them in small ways. After breakfast, Curran decided to venture deeper into the forest. He had seen patterns in the terrain that suggested a richer ecosystem farther away, perhaps even a safer area for the cubs to explore. The princess followed at a cautious distance, her eyes scanning constantly. The cubs ran ahead, stopping occasionally to investigate flowers or insects. Curran marveled at how quickly they were learning, absorbing lessons from both him and their guardian. Hours passed as they navigated the dense forest. Curran observed more creatures, some curious and friendly, others wary and dangerous. He documented their behaviors, noting which species were potential threats and which could be sources of food or resources for the cubs. The princess was invaluable in this process, her instincts guiding them safely through hidden hazards and teaching the cubs how to move quietly and cautiously. In the late afternoon, they came to a natural clearing surrounded by towering trees. The light here was brighter, filtered through high branches, and a small stream ran through the center. Curran realized this could be an ideal temporary base, a place where the cubs could explore safely and he could continue his research. He signaled the princess, and she approached cautiously, inspecting the area. After a tense moment, she stepped aside, allowing the cubs to explore. Curran began preparing the area, clearing small hazards and creating markers to alert him to approaching predators. The cubs played nearby, their confidence growing with each passing hour. The princess watched closely, sometimes guiding them gently but mostly letting them learn on their own. Curran felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was more than survival, it was growth, trust, and learning, a lesson in cooperation between species. As night fell, Curran lit a small, safe fire to provide warmth. The cubs huddled near the princess and he sat beside them, documenting the day's events. The forest was alive with sounds, but there was no immediate threat. He realized that they had formed a rhythm, human knowledge, alien instinct, and cub learning all working together. Curran spoke softly to the princess. "We're doing well. We're safe for now." "And we're learning together?" She tilted her head, ears flicking, and for the first time, Curran thought he saw something like trust, perhaps even appreciation. That night, as he drifted into sleep, Curran knew that the journey ahead would be full of challenges. The forest was vast and dangers lurked in every shadow. But he also knew that with empathy, ingenuity, and courage, humanity could thrive even in the most alien worlds. The cubs were alive. The princess was learning to trust him, and he had proven that humans could be allies, protectors, and partners in a universe that was as wild as it was beautiful. And so, as the twin moons rose again over Lyra 7, Curran, the cubs, and the feral princess rested, ready to face the next day, stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. The morning on Lyra 7 began with a soft mist curling around the glowing plants. Dr. Curran Vall woke to the quiet sound of the cubs stirring. Their small chirps echoed gently across the clearing, and the feral princess stretched, her golden-brown fur catching the pale light of the twin moons fading in the sky. Curran sat up slowly, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of the clearing. He had learned over the past days that patience was as important as any tool when living in this wild forest. After preparing the morning nutrients, Curran watched the princess as she guided the cubs through a series of exercises. They climbed small trees, practiced crouching low to avoid detection, and learned to move silently. Curran realized that every lesson was about survival, not just physical but mental. He marveled at how intelligent these creatures were, and how quickly the cubs adapted to both her guidance and his. Humanity had brought tools and knowledge, but here, it was cooperation and observation that mattered most. Curran decided it was time to explore a region he had noticed from the hill earlier. The terrain was more rugged and dense, but it could hold resources crucial for the cubs' long-term survival. He gestured to the princess, who studied him intently, ears swiveling. After a tense moment, she accepted, leading the cubs through a narrow path between glowing vines and towering trees. The forest seemed to respond to their movements, shadows shifting, soft sounds echoing as if watching them closely. Hours into their journey, Curran noticed that the forest floor became uneven, with hidden roots and sudden drops. The cubs stumbled a few times, but the princess guided them carefully, teaching them how to navigate the dangerous terrain. Curran realized that these lessons were invaluable. Survival in Lyra 7 required understanding the environment deeply. Every sound, every movement, every shadow held meaning. He began to mimic the princess's observations, learning to read the forest as she did. As they climbed a ridge, the distant cry of another creature reached their ears. The cubs froze, their small bodies tense. The princess crouched low, scanning the trees, and Curran followed her gaze. From the shadows emerged a pack of creatures unlike any he had seen before. They were sleek, agile, and far larger than the cubs, with glowing eyes and sharp senses. They did not attack immediately, but their presence was enough to send a wave of alert through the group. Curran understood that he had to act quickly. He retrieved the signaling device he had used before, but this time, he realized that the standard light and sound might not be enough for these creatures. He needed a better plan. Quickly, he collected some bioluminescent plants from the forest floor and rigged them near a narrow pass. He tied vines around them to create a line that, when disturbed, would scatter the glowing plants and create sudden flashes of light. The cubs watched curiously, and the princess observed silently, her eyes sharp. As the pack approached, Curran triggered his trap. The glowing plants scattered, producing flashes of light that confused the approaching creatures. The princess took advantage of the distraction, her movements precise and powerful as she positioned herself between the cubs and the pack. Curran stayed calm, watching the reactions of both the cubs and the pack. The predators hesitated, uncertain of the strange combination of light, movement, and sound. After several tense moments, the pack retreated, disappearing into the shadows. The cubs chirped softly, their glowing eyes bright with relief. The princess relaxed slightly, brushing against Curran as if acknowledging his help. Curran smiled, realizing that the bond between them had grown even stronger. Humans had technology, but it was their creativity and courage that had protected these young lives today. The group continued deeper into the forest. Curran used the time to teach the cubs small survival skills, blending human techniques with the lessons the princess had already given. He showed them how to identify safe plants, how to move quietly, and how to sense changes in the environment. The cubs were quick learners, imitating both Curran and the princess with remarkable skill. Curran felt a deep sense of satisfaction. These creatures were not just survivors, they were becoming adept at navigating a dangerous world. By midday, they reached a natural clearing with a small, shallow pond. Curran tested the water and found it safe. The cubs drank eagerly, and the princess watched them closely, occasionally nudging them away from dangerous areas. Curran took a moment to observe the surroundings. The area was rich in resources, plants for nutrition, small insects for protein, and natural shelter from the forest canopy. He realized this could become a temporary base for more extensive exploration. As they rested, a sudden tremor ran through the ground. Curran's ears caught the faint vibrations before his eyes saw anything. The cubs froze, chirping softly, and the princess crouched low, muscles tense. From the dense forest ahead emerged a creature enormous in size, far larger than any predator Curran had encountered before. Its limbs were thick, its skin covered in rough, stone-like scales, and its eyes glowed a deep crimson. It was clearly a top predator, and it had noticed them. Curran did not panic. He gestured for the cubs to stay close to the princess, who immediately positioned herself between them and the threat. He studied the creature, noticing its movements and behavior. It was intelligent but cautious. He realized that a direct confrontation would be dangerous. He needed a plan that relied on strategy, not strength. He scanned the clearing and noticed several hollow logs and rock formations. Quickly, he led the cubs and the princess toward these natural obstacles, creating a path that would confuse the predator if it tried to charge. Curran then used his signaling device, combining it with scattered glowing plants to create an array of flashing lights and sounds. The predator hesitated, confused by the unfamiliar signals. The princess leapt forward, her movements precise and deliberate, making herself appear larger and more threatening. The predator paused, reassessing the situation. Curran realized that the combination of human ingenuity and the princess's instinctual power was giving them an advantage. They were not fighting blindly, they were using strategy and intelligence. After a tense standoff, the predator finally retreated, disappearing into the dense forest. The cubs chirped softly, their glowing eyes wide with relief. The princess approached Curran, brushing against his arm in a gesture of trust and acknowledgement. He smiled, knowing that their cooperation had saved the day. Humans were not the strongest creatures in the universe, but their ability to think, adapt, and act with intelligence could protect even the most vulnerable. As night fell, Curran prepared a small shelter near the pond, using branches and glowing leaves. The cubs curled up near the princess, and he sat quietly, observing them. The forest around them was alive with sounds, chirps, rustling leaves, and distant calls of creatures moving through the shadows. Curran realized that life on Lyra 7 was full of beauty and danger, and that surviving here required more than courage. It required respect, intelligence, and empathy. He reflected on the events of the day. The cubs were learning, the princess was trusting him more, and they had survived a threat far greater than anything he had faced before. Humanity had the ability to thrive in strange worlds, not by dominating, but by understanding and cooperating. The bond between human and alien, between guardian and cub, was a testament to what intelligence and compassion could achieve. Curran spoke softly, almost to himself. "We've faced danger today and we survived, together." The princess's ears flicked and the cubs chirped in response, as if understanding. For the first time, Curran felt a sense of belonging. He was no longer just a visitor in this wild forest. He was part of a small family that relied on each other to survive. The next morning, Curran woke to find the forest bathed in soft light, the air filled with the hum of life. The cubs were awake, exploring the edges of the clearing, and the princess stood nearby, her eyes sharp but calm. Curran prepared their morning meal, mixing the nutrient packs with the bioluminescent plants he had discovered. The cubs ate eagerly, gaining strength with each bite. Curran decided to venture further into the forest to gather more information about potential threats and resources. The princess followed, her movements fluid and protective. The cubs trailed behind, their curiosity leading them to small discoveries along the way. Curran observed their interactions, noting how they learned from both him and the princess, their intelligence growing daily. By midday, they reached a small ridge overlooking a vast expanse of the forest. Curran noticed movement in the distance, shapes moving among the trees, likely more predators or perhaps other intelligent creatures. He realized that the challenges ahead would be greater than anything they had faced so far. But he also knew that with careful planning, cooperation, and courage, they could overcome them. As they descended from the ridge, Curran reflected on the lessons of the past days. Trust had been built through action, empathy, and intelligence. The cubs were thriving, and the princess had begun to see him as more than a human intruder. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that humanity's greatest strength was not strength itself, but the ability to understand, adapt, and protect life. Night fell once more, and the group settled near a natural shelter Curran had prepared. The cubs curled up close to the princess, and he sat nearby, documenting the day's observations. The forest around them was alive, but for the first time, Curran felt a sense of security. He knew that danger would come again, but he also knew that they were stronger now, together. The bond between human and alien had grown deeper. Curran realized that survival on Lyra 7 was not just about avoiding threats. It was about learning, cooperating, and growing stronger as a family. He whispered softly, "Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but we are ready. We can face anything." Curran Vol stirred from his resting place, careful not to disturb the cubs. They were already awake, chirping softly as they stretched and explored the clearing. The feral princess lay nearby, her eyes scanning the trees, alert but calm. Over the past days, Curran had come to understand her patterns, her movements, and the rhythm of her life. Now she no longer saw him as an intruder. He had earned her trust. Curran began the morning as usual, preparing a mixture of nutrient packs and local plants for the cubs. He smiled as they approached, tiny bodies glowing softly in the morning light. The princess watched from a short distance, ears flicking as she ensured the cubs' safety. Curran marveled at how much they had grown in such a short time. Their movements were more confident, their instincts sharper, and their curiosity boundless. They were becoming capable survivors. After breakfast, Curran decided it was time to explore beyond the familiar paths. He gestured to the princess, who studied him silently before leading the cubs toward a new area of the forest. The terrain was denser here, with towering trees and thick underbrush. Curran moved carefully, observing the patterns of life around him. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow, every sound carried meaning. He had learned to read the forest as the princess did, understanding when to pause and when to move. As they progressed, Curran noticed signs of other life forms. Tracks in the soft moss, broken branches, and faint markings on trees suggested creatures of varying sizes moving through the area. Some were harmless, while others could pose a threat. The princess moved with confidence, guiding the cubs along safer paths and teaching them how to interpret these signs. Curran realized that the cubs were not just learning from him, they were learning from her instincts as well. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from above. Curran froze and the cubs chirped softly, sensing the potential danger. A large shadow passed overhead, and Curran looked up to see a massive predator descending from the trees. Its claws were sharp, its eyes glowing red, and its movements were precise. He knew they were fast, far faster than the cubs or even the princess could outrun alone. Curran's mind raced. He could not fight it directly, but he could use strategy. He gestured for the cubs to stay close and activated his signaling device, combining light and low-frequency sound to confuse the predator. The princess crouched in front of the cubs, her body tense and ready. Curran scanned the environment and noticed several narrow gaps between trees and hidden hollows in the forest floor. He led the group toward these, hoping to use the terrain to their advantage. The predator hesitated, unsure of the strange flashes and vibrations. The princess moved swiftly, her agility and size making her appear larger and more threatening. Curran stayed calm, using both his voice and device to create an illusion of multiple threats. The predator paused, then retreated, disappearing into the forest. The cubs chirped with relief, and the princess brushed against Curran, a silent acknowledgement of his help. After the danger passed, Curran led the group to a small, secluded valley. The area was rich with resources, edible plants, insects for protein, and natural shelters formed by fallen trees. He realized this could serve as a long-term base for the cubs. The princess inspected the area, then allowed the cubs to explore freely. Curran watched them closely, noting how they used the lessons he and the princess had taught them. They were confident, agile, and curious, ready to face the challenges of the forest. Curran spent the afternoon teaching the cubs additional skills. He showed them how to identify safe plants, how to move quietly, and how to sense changes in the environment. The cubs were quick learners, absorbing knowledge from both him and the princess. He marveled at their adaptability, realizing that their intelligence and potential were far greater than he had first imagined. As evening approached, Curran decided to create a small observation platform. Using fallen branches and vines, he constructed a safe area where he could watch the cubs while monitoring the surroundings. The princess observed him, occasionally nudging a branch into place or demonstrating a more stable structure. The cubs helped eagerly, their small hands and paws working together in a rhythm of cooperation and learning. Night fell over the forest and the clearing glowed with bioluminescent plants. Curran sat quietly, documenting the day's events and reflecting on the journey so far. The cubs rested near the princess, their bodies glowing faintly, and she remained vigilant, ears twitching with every sound. Curran realized that the bond between them had become unbreakable. He was no longer a visitor, he was part of this family. During the night, a distant roar echoed through the valley. Curran's heart quickened, but he stayed calm. The cubs chirped softly, sensing his calm. The princess stood, her body tense and ready. From the shadows emerged a group of predators, moving quickly and with purpose. Curran knew that this could be their greatest challenge yet. He quickly assessed the terrain. There were rocks, hollows, and fallen branches that could serve as obstacles. Using his signaling device, he combined light, sound, and his knowledge of the environment to create confusion for the approaching predators. The princess moved with precision, positioning herself between the cubs and the threat. Curran guided the cubs, showing them where to hide and how to stay calm. The predators paused, unsure of the unusual signals and the sudden obstacles in their path. The princess leapt and hissed, making herself appear larger and more threatening. Curran moved with confidence, using strategy rather than force to protect the family. After several tense moments, the predators retreated, disappearing into the darkness. The cubs chirped with relief, and the princess brushed against Curran, a gesture of trust and respect. The next morning, the clearing was quiet, and the forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The cubs were awake, exploring with confidence, their energy renewed. Curran prepared breakfast, mixing the nutrients with local plants to strengthen them further. The princess watched closely, ensuring that the cubs ate safely. Curran realized that their survival depended not only on food and safety, but also on learning and adaptation. He decided to take the cubs to a nearby stream he had discovered earlier. The water was clean and abundant, providing hydration and a place to practice swimming and coordination. The cubs followed eagerly, the princess guiding them carefully. Curran observed their behavior, noting how they had become more independent while still relying on guidance when necessary. As the day progressed, Curran noticed signs of other life forms approaching the clearing. He studied the tracks carefully and realized that these creatures were curious rather than aggressive. Using his knowledge of animal behavior, he created signals and gestures to communicate non-threatening intentions. The creatures hesitated, then interacted cautiously, observing from a distance. Curran marveled at how communication and understanding could create harmony even in a wild, alien world. By evening, Curran had led the group to a small plateau overlooking the valley. The view was breathtaking, forests stretching endlessly, glowing softly under the twin moons, with rivers reflecting the bioluminescent plants. He realized that this planet was alive in a way Earth never was, full of challenges but also full of beauty. The cubs played near the edge, confident and agile, while the princess rested, her eyes scanning the horizon. Curran spoke softly. "We've faced so much together and we've survived. You're strong, clever, and capable. You've learned well." The princess twitched her ears, acknowledging his words. The cubs chirped in response, their glowing eyes shining. For the first time, Curran felt a complete sense of harmony. Humanity had brought knowledge, strategy, and creativity, but it was empathy, patience, and cooperation that had ensured survival. The night fell and the forest glowed with life. Curran sat near the princess, documenting everything in his journal. He knew that the cubs would continue to grow stronger, learning from both their guardian and him. The forest was full of dangers, but also opportunities for discovery and growth. Humanity's role here was not to dominate, but to protect, understand, and cooperate. In the following days, Curran and the princess worked together to establish routines. The cubs learned how to find food, identify safe plants, and navigate the forest. Curran continued to teach them small skills, blending human knowledge with the instincts they had inherited from the princess. They became a team, a family united by trust, courage, and intelligence. One morning, Curran observed the cubs playfully imitating the princess, crouching low, leaping lightly, and listening intently to the forest. He realized that they were thriving, growing stronger, and more capable every day. The princess watched with pride, her golden brown fur shimmering in the sunlight. Curran felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Humanity had proven that it could be a positive force, even in the most alien environments, through intelligence, empathy, and cooperation. The forest remained unpredictable, but Curran knew they were ready. The cubs had learned courage and strategy, the princess had learned to trust humans, and Curran had learned the value of patience, observation, and empathy. Together, they had survived dangers that could have destroyed them. Together, they had created a bond stronger than fear, stronger than instinct alone. As the twin moons rose once more over Lyra 7, Curran, the cubs, and the feral princess rested together. The forest around them was alive, humming with the rhythm of life. Curran realized that humanity's greatest triumph was not conquest or power, but the ability to protect, nurture, and collaborate. They had faced the wildest challenges, and they had survived, not through dominance, but through understanding, creativity, and courage. Curran looked at the cubs, their glowing eyes reflecting the moonlight, and whispered, "We're ready for whatever comes next. Together we can face anything." The princess's eyes met his, calm and intelligent, and the cubs chirped softly. The bond between them was complete. Humanity had earned its place here, not as masters, but as allies, protectors, and partners in the wild, beautiful world of Lyra 7. And so, in the heart of the glowing forest, with the cubs thriving and the feral princess watching protectively, Dr. Curran Vall understood that survival and success in this alien world were the result of cooperation, courage, and the quiet strength of empathy. They had faced danger, learned from one another, and grown stronger together. Humanity had not conquered. It had evolved, and in doing so, it had earned the trust of an alien family and the admiration of a wild world that would never forget their courage. The cubs chirped, the forest glowed, and Curran smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning of a story of harmony, intelligence, and hope. Lyra 7 was no longer just a planet to explore. It was a home, a place where human ingenuity and empathy had created something extraordinary.